Welcome. My name is Jiun, and this is CyberTech Alley Podcast, a place where readers of all kinds, including replicants and robots, can gather and have a moment to talk and share ideas. As usual, it's raining, it's late at night, but CyberTech Alley is always ready to open its doors to you. So you came for the longer version on how I met the Lord of the Rings. Sure, I can tell you, it will take long, but if you want to know the details, because I think it's fun in some way, sure, I can tell you. I think we all have favorite books. I have my favorite books, but sometimes we have those books that were important or they changed our life in some way. In my case, The Lord of the Rings is one of my favorite books, my favorite fantasy book or series, but also it's a book that changed my life in some way. So sure, I will share with you how it happened. It all started when I was a child. I was in primary school, if I'm not wrong. I used to have a friend who was a bit older than me. It's like I was a child. He was kind of a teenager in those days, and he has two brothers, an older brother and a younger brother. But I was friend with him. He was a very good friend of mine, actually. He always lent me magazines and comics because they used to buy many comics. They were good at painting too, and it's one of the things why I like hanging out with my friend. He was very good at drawing and painting. I have to share two things about them. One of them is that they were painting their walls, in their bedrooms, and it was kind of scary to enter into that room because they painted this character, Freddy Krueger. I don't know who on earth would do that. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't paint a horror character in my bedroom. But they were fond of different characters, Marvel comics and things like that. Another thing that I remember about them is that they had these big, how can I say, spaceships from Star Wars. And when I was a child, I found that kind of weird because they were older than me, and why they were having those kind of toys. I thought they were toys. Well, now I understand. So they were fond of Star Wars. And in their house, it was the first time I saw these books called The Lord of the Rings. And the first thing that came to my mind was that, these books are about science fiction, about planets, about Saturn, specifically Saturn, the planet. Because of the word rings. Yeah, I was totally wrong. That was the first time I encountered these books, but I was not interested in those days. Later on, when I was in high school, I remember there was this program on TV. I really enjoyed that program because there were different segments talking about different topics. One of them, for instance, was manga. They were talking about anime, and I love anime. Another segment was about horror movies. It was not my favorite, but it was part of the program. And there was another segment that it was about these cards called Magic Card, The Gathering. And even though I was not so fond of the game, although I was interested, I was more interested in the illustrations that appear in these cards. And I remember one day the person in this program was saying, these illustrations are made by, I think it's Alan Lee, I might be wrong. And I found those illustrations very, very beautiful. He was saying, yes, these illustrations were made by, I think, Alan Lee, who is the one creating the covers of the books The Lord of the Rings. And it was the same books that I have seen in the house of my friend, and the same books that I have seen in the library in my high school. So that was the first time that I got interested in reading these books because of the covers. So I decided to read them. I went to the library and I asked for it. But then I discovered that The Lord of the Rings is not the first book you have to read, but you have to read The Hobbit. So I borrowed The Hobbit, and that changed my life. It was the most beautiful story. And then I continued reading The Lord of the Rings. And one of the things I did in those days, I was reading the book, and at the same time I was listening to music. Specifically, I was listening Kenny G, and that was, a way to concentrate. And of course, if you have listened to Kenny G, you will know what type of music is that. And until now, I connect the music and the book. So it was the most amazing, beautiful story I have ever read. And I continue reading. I think I read the Silmarillion. I don't know the exact name in English, but which was an amazing story too, but very complex. And from then on, I just started to get more motivated in reading fantasy, learning a bit more about Tolkien, learning about his life, that he was a person who was creating languages, and because of that, he created this world. And I got interested in those languages and trying to learn more about that. And it was the time when the movies appeared on theaters, and I always wanted to go and watch them on the theater, but I never did, which I feel sad about it. But once I watched the movies in DVD, it was the same. The same feeling, the same image that I created in my mind when I read the book for the first time. From then on, I continue reading fantasy, and until now, it's my favorite book. I have read it a couple of times only. It's not that I read it every year, but from time to time, it's like you feel motivated to read that story again, which is amazing. That was the way I met The Lord of the Rings. It was long ago, and it changed my life in some way. The way I read, the type of books I read, the decision I have taken in my life because of that book. It all started there. So that was my story, the longer version. Well, it's time for me to disconnect, but you are free to stay in CyberTech Alley. I just hope to see you in the next one.